All right, let's dive in. Every single day, literally millions of trades happen on the Indian stock market. But if you ever really stop to think about what happens the second after you hit that buy button, well, today we're going to pull back the curtain on CDSL. It's this invisible but absolutely essential engine that powers the whole thing.
So, here's our game plan for this explainer. First up, we're going to find the digital vault where your shares actually live. Then, we'll unpack how CDSL's business machine really works and, how it actually makes its money. After that, we'll look at its unique spot in the market. It's a fascinating setup. And we'll wrap it all up by showing you why this hidden engine is something you, as an investor, should probably know about.
Okay, let's kick things off with the most basic question of all.
So picture this. You've just bought some shares in a company you're excited about. But where are they? I mean, they're not a file sitting on your computer, right? And they're not just a line of code inside your brokerage app. So where do these digital assets, where do they actually live?
Well, they live in something called a depository. And honestly, the best way to think about it is like a bank, but for your investments. Instead of holding your cash, it holds your stocks, your bonds, your mutual funds, all in a secure electronic format. And this whole magic trick of turning old-school physical share certificates into a secure digital thing, that's called dematerialization.
And that brings us right to our main event, CDSL, which stands for Central Depository Services Limited. It's one of only 2 places in all of India that does this, that acts as this bank for shares. It is, for all intents and purposes, the digital vault where your investments are kept safe and sound.
But, just holding shares is really only the beginning. To get the full picture of CDSL, we've got to see how it's woven into the very fabric of the market's day-to-day operations.
Okay, think of this as the control panel for the whole engine. CDSL does so much more than just storage. It handles the settlement of every single trade, making sure shares actually move from the seller to the buyer. It's the one processing your dividends and bonus shares. It even lets you pledge your securities if you need a loan. See, this isn't just a vault, it's the market's entire operational backbone.
All right, so if you're the backbone of the entire stock market, that sounds like a pretty good gig, right? But how do you actually make money from it? Let's break down exactly where CDSL's revenue comes from. Now check this out, because what's really cool about this is the diversity. Their income isn't just riding on one thing. You can see the biggest slice of the pie, about 35%, comes from transaction charges. That makes sense. But look at the other parts. There are these super important recurring revenues from annual fees that companies have to pay and also charges for data services. It's a really solid mix.
So, let's trace the money, step by step. First, companies pay what's called an annual issuer charge, pretty much just for the privilege of having their shares available. Second, and this is the big one, are transaction charges. It's a tiny, tiny fee on every single trade, but they add up. Then you've got fees for data and KYC services. And finally, they get a piece of the action from big events like IPOs. It's this really clever, multi-layered system.
And this brings us to one of the most fascinating parts of this whole business, the competitive landscape, or the lack of one. The entire Indian stock market, with its crores and crores of investors, runs on just 2 of these companies. It's a classic duopoly.
To really get a sense of CDSL's scale, let's just look at 3 mind-boggling numbers. First up, the people. They manage over 15.9 crore demat accounts. Just let that sink in. That's how many individual investors are plugged into their system. Next, let's talk market share. Of all the retail investors out there, CDSL holds a staggering 80% of the accounts. I mean, think about that for a second. 8 out of every 10 individual investors in India are using their service. That's just dominance. And finally, let's talk about the money, the sheer value of it all. Those accounts hold securities worth over 79 lakh crore rupees. Wow. When you see numbers like these, you start to realize this isn't just another big company. It is a systemically important piece of India's entire financial infrastructure. So, who's the other giant in this 2-player game? It's NSDL, the National Securities Depository Limited. As you can see here, CDSL is mostly tied to the Bombay Stock Exchange, while NSDL is linked to the National Stock Exchange. NSDL got started a few years earlier, and here's a fun fact. You can actually tell them apart just by looking at your demat account number. It's a different format for each.
And their journey to this dominant position has been absolutely incredible. They kicked things off in 1999, then made history in 2017 by becoming the first listed depository in the entire Asia-Pacific region. But just look at the explosion since then, from 3 crore accounts in 2020 to over 15 crore by 2025. I mean, that's not just growth, that's a direct reflection of the boom in retail investing across India.
All right, so we've covered what CDSL is, how it works, and the tiny club of competitors it has. But let's bring it all home. Why does any of this actually matter to you as an investor?
Because, look, knowing about CDSL isn't just random trivia. It's about understanding the very foundation that keeps your investments safe. It really is the essential plumbing of the market. It's totally invisible when it's working right, but absolutely everything would grind to a halt without it.
You know, maybe the best way to think about it is like this. CDSL is a toll booth on the Indian financial highway. As more and more cars, or in this case, more investors, get on the highway, and as the traffic, or transactions, picks up, that toll booth just keeps collecting more revenue. Its success is directly tied to the growth of the entire market. And that really leaves us with one final, big question to think about. As millions more investors continue to pour into the Indian market, could investing in the essential, non-negotiable plumbing of the whole system be the smartest investment of all? Something to chew on. Thanks for tuning into this explainer.